Hello everyone and welcome to episode 3 of Bionicle Lore Explained. As usual, this is your host, Pilot of Solus, and in this episode we'll be discussing the early history and importance of one of the most prominent locations in the Matoran universe, Metru Nui. In this series, I want to give you all a somewhat accurate timeline for the events in the Bionicle story and lore. So for now on, we'll be referring to the Reformation of Spherus Magna as present day. Anything before them will be considered before Reformation, or BR for short, and anything after will be called after Reformation, or AR. Whenever we move on to a new topic, I'll try and remember to put the closest estimate for the year somewhere on screen so you can get an idea of when everything takes place. Now, let's get on with the episode. In a way, Metru Nui could be seen as the capital of the Matoran universe. This island metropolis was constructed in the far north inside Matoran Nui's head, and it functioned as his brain. This is a common theme among the different islands. They function as different organs for the Great Spirit that were maintained by the Matoran workers. Because Metru Nui acted as Matoran Nui's brain, it was one of the most important, and thus was the only island inside its dome. In the early days of the Matoran universe, this great city hadn't even been completed. When constructing the Great Spirit robot, the Grey Beings laid the foundations, but Matoran workers under the guidance of Toa-Helrix completed the city. Metru Nui is divided into 6 districts called Metrus that are each in charge of different industries. Ta Metru was responsible for forging weapons, Kanohi masks, and Kanoka discs. Ga Metru was a center of education and knowledge. Ko Metru was the home of the scholars. Onu Metru contained archives of information on the Matoran universe. Po Metru manufactured most of the goods used by the Matoran, and Le Metru created the modes of transportation used throughout the city. These industries worked together to create a thriving society on the island city, which made it one of the safest places in the Matoran universe. However, Metru Nui is no stranger to conflict and violence. About 600 years after the construction concluded, Metru Nui was attacked by a powerful Rahi called the Kanohi Dragon. This Rahi ravaged the city until a team of Toa heroes arrived and imprisoned it in the archives. Another 7,500 years passed until disputes between Ta Metru and Po Metru escalated into a full war between the districts. Ga Metru and Onu Metru allied with Ta Metru, while Le Metru and Ko Metru chose the side of Po Metru. The Matoran all quit their work to fight each other in the streets, which led to the Great Disruption. Since the Matoran weren't working, Matoran Nui was becoming weak, and someone needed to intervene to stop the conflict. Toa Joven led his team on a mission to find the Mask of Life, which could be used to restore Matoran Nui back to full health, but the Makuta had their own ideas. The Brotherhood's leader Mizarek sent Makuta Pterodax to Metru Nui. Pterodax then proceeded to capture Matoran and put them in the archives of Onu Metru, where Rahi were released that slaughtered the Matoran in cold blood. The fear that Pterodax created was enough to stop the conflict for good, and he was assigned to the region to watch over by the Brotherhood. The second war to take place in Metru Nui was known as the Toa-Dark Hunter War, which took place 3001 years before the Reformation of Spherus Magna. It all started when the Dark Hunters, a faction of the most dangerous mercenaries in the Matoran universe, released the Kanohi Dragon from its prison within the archives. The Kanohi Dragon getting released would cause the formation of a new Toa team called the Toa-Mangai. This team consisted of 11 members, the most notable being Lakan Toa of Fire, Tuya Toa of Water, and Nadiki Toa of Air. These Toa were able to stop the Kanohi Dragon's rampage in Metru Nui and exiled the Dark Hunters who came to make a deal with Turaga Doom, the leader of Metru Nui. The mercenaries released the Kanohi Dragon upon the city in an attempt to offer protection to the great city, telling Doom that they could help defend against such threats, but the Turaga saw right through their lies. The Dark Hunters left defeated that day, but soon they'd be back to get their revenge. Their first attempt to capture Metru Nui was an unsuccessful kidnapping of Turaga Doom, which was thwarted by the Toa-Mangai. This continued failure led the Dark Hunters' leader, the Shrouded One, to an obsession over the city, and he eventually decided to take Metru Nui through brute force. Initially, the Toa had trouble holding back the Dark Hunters, and Metru Nui's situation seemed bleak, until reinforcements consisting of 100 Toa arrived in the city. In the following months, the Toa began to regain control of what territory they had lost, which resulted in more casualties and conflict. The end of the war would finally begin to set upon the two factions when Nadiki of the Toa-Mangai was approached by a Dark Hunter named Lariska. She offered Nadiki complete control over Metru Nui, but he'd need to betray his friends and fellow Toa to do so. Nadiki accepted, but unknowingly Lakan had followed him and knew of his betrayal. Lakan left to inform Doom, but was stopped in his tracks by another Dark Hunter named Hakken. Hakken offered Lakan an artifact called the Makoki Stone in exchange for the lives of several captured Dark Hunters. Lakan accepted since he knew it wouldn't matter how many Dark Hunters were left standing, because now he had a way to exile them for good. Hideki thought he was luring the Toa into a trap when he was really the one being tricked. He led the Toa into the Canyon of Unending Whispers, which would be the site of the final confrontation seen in the war. The trap sprung and the Dark Hunters went to ambush the Toa, but Lacan met their attack with an ambush of his own. 300 newly arrived Toa came to oppose the Dark Hunters at the final avenue of their long and brutal conflict. This battle would end in victory for the Toa, and they sent the Dark Hunters back to where they came from, taking the betrayer Hideki along with them. So that's going to be all for this episode of Bionicle Lore Explained, and before you tell me, yes, I know that's not all the history and lore about Metru Nui. This episode was just meant to be about the early history of this great city, but I do hope to discuss this location more in future episodes. If you want, you can request any topic you want me to cover next in this series, but if there aren't any suggestions, I guess I'll just choose it myself. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed because I definitely had some fun making this video. That'll be all, so goodbye for now.